Know my heart and mind. Welcome to the Empowering the Village podcast with your host Andrea Greer. As the saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child. We tackle the real questions and tricky topics you often wonder about, so you never have to journey alone. In this podcast, your host Andrea Greer is here to support you so children like me can thrive and flourish. Join us as we dive deep into discussions designed to empower, educate, and connect our community. Are you ready? Let's jump in.
Welcome to the Empowering the Village podcast. My name is Andrea Greer, your host. I am a trauma and play therapist, and today we have a special guest who I respect very dearly, John Parsons. Thank you so much for being here.
Kia ora, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'd just like to introduce John Parsons because he's got a wonderful bio. I've worked with him over the past 10 years and just over the care and protection scene, in the residential group home and social work, and just really love your passion, what you stand for, your message. And so, I just really want to introduce you today to the audience. So, John has an incredible talent for cutting through the noise of the digital world and explaining exactly what people need to know to stay safe online. He's worked with parents, teachers, businesses, you name it. And he's all about giving people the confidence to use technology without fear. His sessions are practical, eye-opening, and honestly pretty empowering. John is the author and the guide for parents, keeping your children safe online. John Parsons was awarded the Paul Harris Fellow by Rotary International for his significant work in child protection online and within the community. Welcome, John, to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So let's begin with a few icebreaker questions just to have a little bit of fun and, just kind of relax into the conversation, but also for our listeners to get a feel of who you are. So first of all, are you a tea or coffee person?
Coffee, decaf.
Coffee, decaf. Oh my goodness. How can you have decaf?
I can drink about 10 or 12.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
I'm a decaf.
That's cool. I used to do decaf too when I was pregnant with my first because the smell of coffee was really putting me off. But since then, after having 2 kids, I'm back on the caffeine. A winter wonderland holiday or a warm tropical destination?
Winter. I can't sleep in the summer. I prefer winter, snow, rain. I love darkness early in the afternoon with a big log fire. So I'm very much winter orientated.
Very much love the cold. I'm completely the opposite, a tropical person through and through. So if you could ever change your career at some point and do something completely different, what do you think you would?
I always daydreamed as a child of being a tennis player, driving a Porsche, wearing red shoes. And I have no idea where the red shoes come from, but tennis, I love the game of tennis. I love to watch it. I think I can play it, but then when I try, I'm really bad, but I do like the game.
Awesome. Who's your favorite tennis player?
I like people from the sort of, Agassi, Borg, people like that. And spending a lot of time in Wimbledon, you get to see these characters walk around the streets. So tennis would be my thing.
Yeah, awesome. My dad loves Agassi too.
Fantastic.
Great connection there. And what is your favorite childhood memory?
Can I give you 2?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to leave one person out over the other one. One day, my father is a carpenter, and he was making a wooden box. Can't remember what the box was for. And he's kneeling down on the floor with some tools and chisels and things around him. And I always remember the smell of the wood, which I love to this day. And he said to me, "Can you pass me a knife out of my toolbox?" And I looked down and I said, "The one with the serrated edge." And he looked at me and he said, "That's such a lovely word, son." And I never forgot the feeling that gave me. So I passed him that knife and he carried on with the job. Here's the next one. As a child, I used to get the mumps and tonsillitis, I was quite sickly as that sort of 7 or 8-year-old child, and I'd get the mumps and I'd have to lie there on the couch with all these warm socks. My mum used to warm these socks up for some reason and put them around my neck. But when it got really bad and I got a fever, then I'd just lie on the couch and my mother would just lie there, stroking my head, and she'd talk to me. And her voice was velvet, and that touch was just the best touch in the world. So those would be 2 of my most favourite childhood memories.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, sense of connection.
Yeah, connection.
That's great. That's cool. So talking about connection, this is a great segue into what we're going to get into today. And I just, over the past decade, I've just really loved hearing you in your seminars. And the message that I really always take home with me is the importance of connection from parents. Right. So even though, children are in a digital world and it kind of can seem quite disconnected from us, how do parents maintain that connection with children in that digital world?
Early. I talk about the heavy parenting lift years, the heavy lift parenting years, sort of 0 to 13. Whatever we do in that age tends to be something that's replicated in the child as they grow up for themselves. So an example of staying connected is keeping the technology out of the bedroom. But you don't start that at 9 or 10, you start it at 3 and 4 years of age. Don't let them take any form of technology into the bedroom when they're 3 and 4 and 5 years of age. Then the bedroom will imprint on them as a place to sleep and shut the world out, right? So you start those things off young, and it's easier to achieve it at 11, 12 and 13 and 14 when real big risks around technology increase for children, especially in relation to how the brain develops. So start young. Number 2, when we eat food together, we should just eat food together. No technology around us, no noise pollution from the TV. Parents should also keep their technology away from the table. And if they get a text message, don't respond to it. And that models to the child that technology has a place in our lives, but it shouldn't swamp us. Another thing is to give your child choice about the things they do on a daily basis with the guardians. Take 2 or 3 board games, Monopoly, playing cards, anything like that. Things that we do with the child in the early days stay with them through the teenage years. So those are just some really basic ones.
I love that around starting young and those foundations, because if we know about brain development, we talk about how neural connections form through habit, through repetition. And so all those things can form the wiring, isn't it?
And an example of that, absolutely. And an example of that is if you take a child that's 9 months old and when you take them in the car, we put them in the car, we put them into their special seat and we strap them in. And we do that repeatedly. Eventually the child will acquire the behaviour themselves, but without the knowledge to know why. And that's the power of parental modelling. So if we look at the seatbelt example, when you get that child to say 4 or 5 years of age, if the parents don't put their belt on, they'll often say to the parents, put your belt on. Don't like driving without the belt on themselves. So we introduce the behaviour at a young age. The knowledge to why starts to come later as the brain matures, right? You can do the same with technology. Don't let it into the bedroom at all. From 0 to 14, no technology in the bedroom. That keeps a child in the living room space amongst the parents. That's how we can reduce what we call cyber separation. We talk about cyber separation where a child is so engrossed in the technology that they're missing out on the effects of being raised by, guardians that are paying attention to them. But it is a two-way conversation or a two-way relationship. I spoke to some children that have said to me, they've learnt to speak quickly to their parents because if they take their time to construct a question or have a conversation, if mum or dad's phone gets a text message, they'll break off and respond to the text message and the child feels disconnected. Please understand, that's not a judgment on parents. Parent and child have got a mammal brain, right? And it responds to dopamine, for the child and for the adult. So there's no judgment in this, and I'm certainly guilty of it myself. If I brought my daughters in there, they could tell you the amount of times that I choose to look at technology. But we need to remember 0 to 13 is when we want to be connected as long as we can, spending quality time with them.
And so when you're talking about connection, a lot of it is that real face-to-face kind of connection. Yeah.
Be in the world with them, talking to them, playing with them, making them laugh, And also I say to parents that, often parents will contact me and say that my child, something horrible's happened at school. A child wasn't picked for netball. So the child comes home and says, I wasn't picked, I was left on my own, I was excluded. And the mother swapped out those words for more horribilised language. And part of it was what she'd experienced in her own life. But what she also did was dismiss what the child had experienced and says, well, you go and do something else, don't worry about the netball. Sometimes parents, including me, we can be scared of our children's feelings. And sometimes it's better just to sit with them, sit next to them, take some good slow breathing, and often that problem starts to resolve itself within the child. But if we rush in quickly and just dismiss it, we haven't helped that child learn to deal with some of these things.
You're absolutely right there, because in my play therapy setting, when I'm supporting parents, a lot of it is really allowing children to be able to feel those emotions, to name it, to notice it. And so whatever we feel, we can heal and we can integrate. So I think, absolutely.
One more thing on that, families that eat together, heal together. So when I work with families where there's been trauma in the family around technology, one family we worked with, there was no table in the house, no dining room table. So, some neighbours got them one from the recycle centre, put a dining room table in there, got some chairs around it, and that was the first time they sat as a family. And they started to talk to each other, have conversations, no technology around them. And that's a place where everyone can see each other's needs and where the guardians can really assess their children. And on that note, I think it was a Dunedin longitudinal study showed that children that eat with their families on a regular basis can cope better with stress and problems as they grow up into adulthood compared to children that don't have that early connection through food.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's that relational buffering
Right.
as well. And it's that protective layer,
Yeah.
isn't it? And I just love what you're saying here around intentional, being so intentional.
And it is technology that can corrupt those connections by having the tech, if 5 people are around a table, one guardian, 2 guardians, whatever the family's made up of, and there are 2 or 3 children around that table, all of them looking at their own devices eating food, we're not celebrating the food. We're not even tasting it. The food becomes a problem we've got to get past to get back to the screen. And that's what we need to. So we need to get back to some non-negotiables where we say that technology has a place in our lives, but not in our relationships with each other within the house, Keep it away from the table. Keep it out of the bedroom. When a child gets out of bed in the morning, they shouldn't go near technology until they've done 2 or 3 things. Make the bed, get their lunch ready, whatever it is they can do for their age, but not straight to technology.
I love that. So connection really is hand in hand with boundaries. So in order for us to really nurture and create a sense of safety for our children, there needs to be boundaries. And we as parents need to model that boundaries.
And in my workshops, we're not our children's friends, we're their guardians. And I meet lots of parents, and most parents will say, I want to be my child's friend, and it's just a sentence of endearment. It's to say how much I love my child. But when we meet parents that really want to be their child's friend, that's what we need to change. For both of them. Parents are guardians, and the word no is an important word to use now and again. And what we see is often parents become confused about what their role is, not wanting to say you can't have this to a child. The child comes home and says, look, I want a phone. My friends have got one. If I don't get a phone, I'm going to be excluded. I'm going to be lonely. And those words are terrifying for parents, to think their child could be excluded from a group and feel lonely in a big school when I'm not there to look after them. Of course, that's going to hit that nurture, right? It's going to hurt. But we need to be careful with that emotion. The teenagers that we're working with today who've had early exposure to social media at age 8 and 9, or playing R18 games when they're 6 and 7 years of age, we see the issues they face when they're 12 and 13 and 14. And if parents could get a future look at that, they'd be much more confident in saying, no, not just yet, you're not having it yet. So parents need to be the parents.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. So, I'm just hearing you say that it's awesome for parents who are, I guess, coming in with a clean slate around, we can set these boundaries. My children are still little. I can put all these foundations in place. But what about parents who already have their teens around 11 or 12? They already handed them the phone. How do you think they could make that, that repair?
Okay.
Yeah.
And just let me go back to one other thing, if I could, that I missed out there in this. Parents need to understand what boundaries do for children. They make children better risk takers, right? If you take a child that's not walking around yet, but crawling, then we define the space they can crawl in, right? So let's say we remove any boundaries. We open all the doors in a house, right? And the child starts to crawl beyond the guardian's line of sight. For the first time, they encounter a grouchy cat, and the cat screams at them and scratches and runs. The child wasn't prepared for that. They weren't capable of defending themselves, and that creates a sort of a mini trauma in that child. Keep doing that in other different situations. You'll have a child growing up that can be quite startled by lots of different things, right? Boundaries allow us to create a space that's predictable, which the child can explore the world based on their own competency. And our job is to expand those boundaries as the child's capability increases. If we do that too quickly, we cause problems potentially later on or in the immediate, right? If we've got a child that has had no boundaries around them, and we both work in that space, right? And I work with families sometimes that have been referred through OT or other families like that. And although the focus is around technology, you have the underlying issues that get pulled in alongside that. And when you meet a 12 or a 13-year-old that doesn't see themselves as a victim, doesn't see themselves as generating risk beyond their capability, then you have a major issue to deal with. They've shut the parents out of the technology. That could be a young person that's been sexually exploited online. They've sent naked images to that person. And then after they've come through that trauma, they don't see themselves as a victim. They were just having a joke. It was okay. That's they're denying it to themselves, and they need help with that. There's no judgment on them. They're not letting... we've created a condition in the early part of the child's life where they've been given technology at a very young age without any oversight. But of course, at 7 and 8, there are risks, but the risks become much bigger as that brain develops around 11, 12 and 13. So the child gets to 12 or 13, they've had no boundaries put around them, they take the technology in the bedroom when they're really young, they've got used to using it, they've been playing R18 games when they're 6 and 7, so their vocabulary has been corrupted and sexualized. That child is at far more risk of being sexually exploited online. Because when a predator grooms a child, they have to take them beyond their normal range of vocabulary. If they're not used to corrupted language or sexualized language, they can recoil, that's not who I am, and retreat back to the lighthouse in the family, right? Or the guardian. If they've got used to that language, they will often not see it as a warning sign. So imagine you've got that situation now and the parents are frantic, they can't get back into the child's technology. And so I'm just sort of couching what you've said. What we need to do in that situation then is sit down with the whole family and start with the relationship. One 13-year-old, she was so adamant that mum and dad were not going to be in the technology. And I said, look, the day you were born, you put a light into your mum and dad's soul that has never gone out. Every part of their DNA is orientated to protecting you. You've all gone through a major trauma. What you faced is horrific. And the parents understand that from their perspective. Now they want to get back involved with your life, and I'm going to help you do that. But you've got to understand it's their right to do that. You have a right to certain types of privacy, right? And we've got a counsellor you can speak to. You've got your doctor you can go to. There are lots of people you can get help and talk about the things you need as a personal young person. But we have to let your parents back into your life. Now, this is when the situation allows for that, right? Yes. There can be certain situations where that cannot occur. There's been a traumatic event occur, and then we looked at one of the contributing factors was lack of oversight in the technology, and we're trying to reconnect parents back, then we get that friction. And then I'll say to the child, look, I'm going to give you a piece of paper. Write down 10 things that you love about your parents, and maybe they'll take a day or two to do that. They'll write the 10 things down. I'll get their parents to do the same. Then they read them to each other. And the tears that come are massive, huge. And it's in those moments when we speak from the heart that we can often get back into what relationships need to look like. So, and I'll say to the child then, right now, you're not going to like this, but understand the foundation of where this is coming from. How you've just spoke to each other. You're not going to take your technology to the bedroom. We need to be able to protect you from what has happened in the past. Going forward, we'll see what that looks like. But there's going to be no taking the bedroom. When you get out of bed in the morning, there's 3 things you're going to do that contribute to the house you live in. You're going to get some choice in what that looks like. I know Dad wants the car wash, but I'm saying, no, the car's too big for you to do. There's humour in it. But there's also a sense of direction that we're going into. So we start with the relationship, and then we just get slightly more firm in our confidence and say, look, this is going to happen, not because it's a punishment, but because your mom and dad love you. It's about the relationship they've got with you. That's their job. So we start there.
So I love what you've said so far around the rupture and repair.
Yeah.
There is no relationship that's so far off that you can't repair it. But also I love the reestablishing of that boundaries is so important.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it's protective. Yeah, that's great. Awesome. So secrecy can really be the enemy of safety online. Yeah. So when parents notice their children or teen becoming withdrawn or doing things on their device in secret, what do you think would be the best ways for them to support that openness?
First of all, I don't like the word secrets around children. So when I work with teachers or anyone that's in a training role in safeguarding children or anything like that, children don't keep secrets. They have personal information that belongs to somebody because of their age. The word secret enables certain types of criminality against children, You've got to keep a secret. You can't tell anyone. So I'm very careful with what that word looks like. From parents' perspective, what I say to parents is that, if you walk into the living room and your child is becoming secretive and turning the phone over and not letting you look at it, what do you think could be occurring? And they'll say, they could be talking to a complete stranger, which is dangerous. You're absolutely right. That's an informed fear. That's not an irrational fear. That's an informed fear. They did a survey over 12 months, 2014 or 15. I'll send you the article after this and you can put it in the link. They found 302 million images online of children that have been sexually exploited. Over 12 months, 302 million children. Now, the victim base is 302 million, but it will go to 1.4 billion. Parents, brothers, sisters, grandparents. I don't know of any therapeutic service that could deal with the needs of that number of people, right? So if the guardians go into the house and they flip the phone over, they're becoming secretive. We call that self-isolation. That's when the parents need to go in and say, look, I need to look at your phone. No, you can't look at it. I say to parents, you don't shout, you don't scream, you just sit down and go, look, I need to look at your phone. I'm your guardian. And if they're on it, turn the router off. Cut all use on it, but take the phone away in a controlled manner, not with threats or anything like that. Take it off them.
They're loving but firm.
Loving but firm. I'm doing this because I love you, and that's my role in your life. I can't walk past this. I can't walk past it physically. I can't walk past it psychologically. I will not fall to sleep tonight if I cannot see what's going on in your life. And those are informed fears because of the stats we've got on these issues, So they need to take the phone away. If the phone has been locked down where they can't get into it, don't give it them back. Take the phone away from them, don't give them back. Because I love you. Can I have that? No, you can't have it because you've shut me out of it. That world you're in is also the world that I need to be in because of your age.
Do you think that it's, for parents, before they hand children the phone, they need to have all these things in place, like those conversations?
So, but it starts at the success at 13 starts at 4, 5, and 6 and 7 with what we do then that leads to that. If we're going to use the relationship as our main thrust into that, we have to start with that. But if we, of course, we're going to have some specific things, right? Specific cyber safety messages. So here it is. Let's say we've got, well, first of all, let's get some real basics in here. I don't think any child should be on any social media until they're 16. Nowhere near it. It's toxic to the developing brain. We've got good research and evidence starting to come through from that. Number 2, you've got the phone, but you're not going to take it into the bedroom. It's going to stay in the lounge area. You're not taking it in there. When you get up in the morning, you're going to have your breakfast. You're going to do some things around the house before you engage with it. So put some basic rules in place. The big ones, the non-negotiables, not in the bedroom, not around food. When family members go out together or people come to the house, the technology gets put away so they continue to evolve in their communication skills within their family, which benefits them when they move beyond the family.
And it's so important, those communication, face-to-face communication, because as we know, the adolescent brain is developing, and it's so key for them to have that face-to-face, being able to read cues, body language.
Absolutely. And non-verbals and body language is part of our survival mechanism, One of the primary roles of a human being is to find a partner and have children. So we need to be really good at selecting a potential partner. If we lose a lot of those visual cues, then that's a risk. The less we socialize with others, the harder it is to spot deception when we're older. And that sounds a bit cynical, right?
No, but it's so true.
But on the other side of that, being positive, being able to communicate effectively leads to us having a much better life. When people can understand what our feelings are and how emotional we are, when we can describe these things, we live in a much better world. I see children that are 7 and 8 years of age, and I'll ask them a question, and some of their answers that come back are stunning. And the next question is, do you read books? Yes, we do. So reading, being immersive with our children around them, being in chatty environments where people are chatting all the time, helps a child in their adult life, in their work and in their personal lives. And technology, if it isn't kept at bay in the early part, can interrupt that progress.
Yeah, because we're so wired for connection and relationship that we need that.
We do, yeah.
And so children, if they don't get it from the parents at home, or they don't get it from the safe adults in their lives, they're going to seek that out.
Absolutely.
From other places.
And, if we're not listening to our own children, some others might be. The other thing
that's the risk.
That's the risk. And just coming back to one thing there, this is around safeguarding or child protection. Coming back to some specifics here, if the adults in a child's life are ever concerned about risk to that child, you can contact NetSafe, you can speak to your police officers. Never hesitate to seek advice from someone if you think your child's in harm's way around their use of technology. If you're not sure, that doesn't matter. If your gut tells you you're worried about something that's happening, have a conversation with an expert to get some advice on what you should do next if they're shutting you completely out of the technology. On that note, if I can just put something in here. Parents, guardians need to understand that some of these R18 games have got extreme violence in them. I can go into schools now, into primary schools, and I can ask children that are 7 and 8 what a Glock is, what a sniper is, what a Molotov cocktail is. What can you do with a car in the game? You can run people over. You can assault females in those games. You can take their lives. And some of these children that are immersed in these games tell those stories when they're writing at school. And of course, when that is given to me, if it's a sexualized drawing or if it's a story of how they're going to use a gun or something like that, then I have to put that report in through OT or the police to have that assessed. R18 games are R18 for a reason. Keep your child's brain in spaces that are designed for children, not for adults.
I see that so much in my play therapy as well, where I work with children. They've been diagnosed with ADHD, and often, whether it's diagnosed or misdiagnosed with ADHD, because often there is an overlap between trauma, environment, ADHD, and many of them are, kind of into those games like Grand Theft Auto, all those R18 games that you're talking about, and what's happening to their developing brain is they're getting those dopamine hits from that.
With very little overhead. So imagine if Nana comes into the house and gives the grandchild a hug, the child will produce dopamine in the brain. But the brain also produces dopamine from playing an R18 game. But we know one is a quality interaction, right? Yeah. So if you take a child from sort of 6 or 7 or 8 and you immerse them in those low-level goal-orientated games where they continually saturate the brain with dopamine, once you take that off them, that brain is just miserable, frustrated, and they'll blame the person that's pulled the plug out. 8, 13 in a high school, they can't focus on trigonometry or maths because their focus can't be there. And they're looking around, they can't self-soothe, they want to get back to their devices. Heavy lift parenting, 0 to 13, is important for so many reasons. That is not their fault. It is not the parents' fault. It is simply this technology is designed to be addictive to this mammal brain, and we just need to think about what we need to do in the early years to give that child a much better chance as they get older.
Yeah. What advice do you have for parents or grandparents raising grandchildren, guardians who have exposed children who are 6, 7, or 8 years of age to R18 games? How do you kind of pull back? Because you don't really want to do that cold turkey as well.
No, again, definitely with some children you couldn't do that cold turkey because, it'd be a bomb going off in the house and you've got grandparents, right? First of all, what the grandparents have got are what we call direct access to non-negotiables. They know how important sleep is. They know that movement is important. They know that basic food stuffs that child needs to be healthy and strong because that's what they typically grew up in themselves. So what I say to parents is you start with the non-negotiables. The child has got to have the right sleep, right? We get them out of bed in the morning. We sit and have some breakfast with them. Before we get to the technology, think about what we do before we get to the tech. Right? Get that relationship going back with the non-negotiables. Sleep is a massive one for any child, especially children that have been through traumas as well. Sleep it's regular sleep helps that child in many ways.
And it's actually sleep that provides that restoration and the healing.
Yeah. So we get the sleep in place, we get the non-negotiable, what every human body needs, movement, fairly healthy diet, around the table, eating food together. Now we're going to come back to the technology, right? First of all, we're going to say to the child, you're not playing R18 games. We're going to bring you back into games that are highly entertaining, but for your age group. It's going to be in the dining room table where we can see the screen, and you will not be connected to people on the internet when you're 8 and 9 years of age. We're going to give you a local game to play on where you can play that game. There's going to be some pain felt by the child.
Yes.
But it's what I call good pain. It's beneficial to them to feel that, to bring that child back into some range of normalcy for their age and the activity that they're pursuing. Now, where can those adults get that support from? That's a really difficult one. I do a lot of work in that area with grandparents. The first thing I do is remove their fear of thinking it's about technology. It is not about technology. It is about your relationship to your grandchild. And number 2, you have the best teacher in your living room to teach you how to do it. That's not me, that's the grandchild. Yeah. So if you get the relationship in, let the grandchild teach you. And research has showed us that when we give children some agency to involve guardians in that, they find more pleasure in sharing that experience with the guardian. So there are ways we can do it. It's not easy, but that's the approach that we take.
Yeah. And I love that because it's also taking that view of, what is driving this behavior. And I'm thinking of that from the parents or grandparents' perspective as well. What is driving that behavior in terms of allowing the ability to be able to play all these games?
Yeah. One thing I always talk to teachers about, all behaviours outside of normalcy convey something to the observer. What we have to do is look at the behaviours and say, what's causing that? What's going on underneath? And often you see environment or lack of certain things within that child. What we tend to do with technology, we look to solve the problem at the technological end and not come slightly back from the tech and look at what other issues we need to deal with. And on that note, helping a child play an age-appropriate game, there is some compromise in that, in as much as, okay, look, you like playing that game, I like playing board games. So we're going to play a board game, and then you're going to play on your game, and I'll play with you on that game. Now, when I first started doing that, I thought the children are going to find that really difficult. I haven't met a child that doesn't love playing a board game with guardians. So we need to mix up the activities, let them play those games, age appropriate, in a space where we can watch the child, not overuse, keeping it to a very minimal amount of time, but also bring in other opportunities to do things with the child that are equally entertaining.
I love that, the weaving in the connection. You know, where I talked about the children I work with in play therapy that love doing all these games, you know, with R18 and all that. But when they come into the play therapy setting with me, they engage so well with board games, with Play-Doh, with paint, with sand. It's like it's in their biology to crave that.
Well, it's embedded in them, right? There is unpredictability. They're doing things with their hands. They're running around. There's lots of activity and noises. We're from that space. I often say to children, when you look at, or I say to adults actually, when you look at 22 people, how many people are on a rugby game? Is it? So you can tell I play football. The beautiful sport, which is football, okay? But in rugby, there's going to be 22 players. Let's say there's 22. I'm sorry. I've just lost an audience, right?
I have to edit that.
God, I'm in New Zealand, yeah? So let's just say there's a group of people playing rugby and they're chasing a ball. Logically, they're just chasing one meal. From 50,000 years ago. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, it's wired in us.
It's wired in us. I'm going to get that, right? That's my meal for the family. Technology tends to make us become sedentary. You know, look what's happened since the Second World War, the way we've evolved as far as mechanized living and things like that. Drive through McDonald's. We pay a price in our skeletal structure. We stop moving, become unhealthy, right? So instead of hunting now, we get our food vac-packed from a supermarket, right? So we have to make sure that whatever we take away in that area, we replace it. And what do? We play sport. When you see children running around playing volleyball or netball or any of these games, their brain is joyful. And we know, research is now showing us, the less we become connected to the outside world, the more unwell we'll be actually becoming. You know, so staying connected in the world is really important so we can enjoy and maximize the use of technology.
Yeah. And this really comes to the segue where I'm talking about, you know, how parents, including myself, I have to be so aware of that doom scrolling because it's so after a day of work, you're tired, you're exhausted. The first thing you want to do is to take up your phone and just kind of
self-soothe.
Yeah, self-soothe with that. Yeah. So you're just thinking around that. How do parents, I guess, be aware of their own use of technology and model that to children? Do you have any kind of tips?
So, first of all, I'm always conscious of saying what we need to do. We also need to own what I don't do, or what I'm aware of. If I like to get out sometimes and go to the gym and do things like that. As I pull up to the gym outside in the car park, I'm craving looking at my phone on YouTube because I'm avoiding doing something I don't want to do. I'll get the dopamine from that. No effort, I can just do it. I got so bad at that, I'd spend 15 to 20 minutes in the car looking at YouTube as a treat because now I'm going to lift. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. And
I'm an adult, right? You know, who works in this field. It can affect all of us, right? But what I say to parents, if we are doom scrolling ourselves, which is simply the slot machine where we're looking for the 4 strawberries, we're looking for something else to fire up the dopamine. We keep doing that until, that's a hit, I'll keep scrolling again. For adults, what I would say is understand that when you do that, you're modelling that to your own child as well. They're seeing you do that. I'm going to do this for the next 3 weeks. You know, I'm not going to get on my device when I get bored sitting in the car waiting for someone to come out of a shop. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to look around. We need to practice doing something. And the reason for it is this. The purpose of a memory is to make a decision in the future, right? So I'll give you an example. Can I go back to children for this one?
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So if we've got children that can't face boredom, and we have lots of children that can't self-soothe, they're constantly entertained with devices, and as soon as you cut the supply off, they sit there and don't know what to do and they panic because there's no previous memory of self-soothing. So what I say to parents is at 2 o'clock on a Saturday, take all tech off your child and then give them 3 things to choose to do, but do nothing else. Eventually the child will have a few tears maybe, get a bit grumpy, but eventually they might pick something and start drawing or reading. Now they have one example in their brain of self-soothing, which means when they face boredom again, they've got one selection to pull that and action that. The more the child learns to self-soothe in the early days, the more they can execute when they're older, because they've got choices in their brain. It's the same for adults, right? So if we practice doing something, I'm not going to use my technology at the table. I'm not going to take it into the bedroom and doom scroll till 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to feel pain in the brain for 3 to 4 days. But once we get through that 3 or 4 days and we feel the benefit of doing that, we have a memory of that which we can call on to reinforce the behaviour going forward.
Yeah, also knowing, what need is being met through the doom scrolling, isn't it, as well? Yes,
absolutely. And I think for parents, for adults, just to give a big number here, this one shocked me. There's a book that will save lives, and it's called While We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Right? The book is stunning if you want to understand the importance of sleep. Any adult that drops below 6 hours regularly, according to this professor of sleep and science, we increase the risk of cancer, cardiovascular disease, stroke and diabetes at the early onset of Alzheimer's by up to 36%.
Wow.
Right? It's bigger than Russian roulette, right? Awareness and education can help us change some of our behaviours. The adults that I see, I work with a lot of different people in police, the Ministry of Justice, people in the health sector. And when I'm in the health sector, I meet lots of people that work in the hospitals. And the amount of adults that I've seen come into the hospital that lack sleep because of their use of technology till the early hours of the morning, either because of work commitments or entertainment. So we need to let those adults understand that we're going to help you through discipline, change the behaviours, understand the consequences if we don't. We get into this risk category.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Just thinking, for a lot of parents that are very much in that survival mode. Yeah. We're just thinking for them to overcome.
For themselves?
Yeah.
Well, I guess if they get pleasure out of being with their children, and again, that's the other thing I should say to that when they play the board games with the children, the adults love the interaction as well. Their brain's getting dopamine from playing the game and being with their children. Yeah. So it's the benefit is on both sides of that.
Yeah, and the mirror neurons are firing off.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's that co-regulation that I always talk about, how co-regulation is the foundation of self-regulation.
Right.
So with providing that connection time with children, setting up scaffolding of this is how we play together, that forms those templates for the child for self-soothing.
Absolutely. And when that parent goes to bed at night and their last thoughts are they've been playing with their child, there's contentment in that. There's value in that knowledge, But again, except we live in a very expensive world. People are often they're time poor because of the jobs they're having to do to put food on the table, or there could be other circumstances, that can really make these things difficult to implement. So as much as I can sit here and talk about what we need to do, we have to also be versatile enough to get involved with the families that don't have the context in their life that we can put these things in and work with them as well and find ways to cause changes for them as well.
Absolutely. The resources and all that. And that's where social work comes into place, understanding the environment and how we can actually put structures in place to support the environment so that the parents can thrive, because we know that thriving parents is thriving children.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. Okay. So, John, your insights are invaluable. And, I just think parents listening to you today are just going to get so much out of this conversation. If you could just talk about one single change that parents can do to just improve connection with their child. And we talked a lot about that. Is there any other ideas that you would have around?
To improve connection?
With their child in terms of stepping into the child's digital world.
So I'll come back to one that I repeated there. Researchers showed us that when you encourage healthy use of technology with boundaries, the child is more likely to comply and follow that parental instruction and enjoy bringing the parents in. First of all, let me just go back to, we want children to become, children make mistakes, adults make mistakes. This generation is not sillier than the previous generation. The reason that Nana and Granddad didn't get jammed up on Instagram is because in the 80s it didn't exist, right?
Yeah.
Right? So we got to, first of all, what we can't do is look and say, you're stupid. One thing I see parents will go is that they'll say to me, in the real world, I'd never do that. What's wrong with my child? There's nothing wrong with your child. It's just that you didn't have the technology your child's got today. That's the difference. Every generation has a challenge. This is the child's challenge as much as the parent's challenge. Don't personalise a poor choice your child might make. In fact, I don't even like the word choice. When I work with children from 0 to 10, I say to parents, these kids don't make mistakes, they learn to make better choices. You understand the reason for that, yeah? Once they get to 11 and 12, the brain is changing.
Is that because mistakes come with a more negative, shame-based?
And what happens is we build a wall where the child won't come and talk to us. So what I say to parents is, look, whatever your words are to build your relationship with your child, let them know how much you love them. And not when it's raining, but when everything's fine. We tell our kids how much we love them when something's gone wrong, but we need to tell them when everything's fine because they remember that. It's an odd thing, We're walking through the supermarket. Do you know how much I love you? Are you okay? I love you so much. And we mean it, right? That goes into their head. And if you ever make a mistake or something goes wrong, you can come and talk to me. If in the past I've overreacted, it's because I love you and I'm sorry that I overreact. But you can always come and talk to me. So we need to build that connection where they can talk to us and isolates victims. Reacting doesn't bring the child to us through fear. So letting the child know that you're going to stuff up now and again, but we've always got your back, we'll always be next to you. If we do overreact, we're going to learn to do better in the future. But if you can't tell us, you've got Nana, you've got Granddad. There's a trusted adult. Tell us who you talk to if you couldn't talk to us. You've got your health professional. You've got your counsellor or your teacher at school. Give children permission to speak to people beyond the primary guardians to get support should they need it. Not when things have gone wrong, when everything's fine. Build that list, and I call it a lighthouse list. That's number one. Number two, if they're going to have social media, number one, you've heard me say this before, bedroom, bathroom, pajamas, never on the internet. The profile picture should have the child in it with a guardian next to them in that profile, and the account should be locked down. Then the guardians need to create their own account to follow their child, and so does Nana and Granddad or the other adults that are in that child's life. I work with families that are through OT, where they're with a family for 6 months. So they're not the parents, but they've gone into that family. We're trying to stabilise those children and get them support somewhere else. Once they go into that home and they've got their own social media, we plug in the trusted adults around them to be in that network with them.
I love that.
And
The village.
The village, right?
And
if they're going to have a phone at least once a week, once every 2 weeks, look at the phone. Not because you don't trust them, but because you love them and that's your job. And the minute they stop letting you look, take the phone off them with love until you can get back to the rules with their use of technology.
Yeah, that's cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, John, for this really powerful and real conversation. So if the listeners want to get in touch with you, is there ways that they can connect with you and hear more about your work?
Yeah, if they go to info@citizen21.co.nz, no, that's the email address. I'm going to get so many corrections of that, and someone's going to tell me how many players there are on a rugby pitch. They're ridiculous. I kind of do know, but if I say it and I'm wrong, I just make it worse. So we'll leave that out. So citizen21.co.nz. Citizen with a Z, co.nz, or just put John Parsons Cyber Safety into Google and it will come up there.
That's awesome. And if schools, I'm just thinking of schools and communities want to book you, do you travel all around New Zealand?
So I travel around New Zealand. I go overseas as well, but primarily I like to stay within New Zealand. And through the Southland region, of course, they just need to contact the local trust, which I can give you numbers to put in within the bottom of the podcast reel.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for being on our first episode of Empowering the Village.
Thank you very much.
That wraps up another episode of Empowering the Village. I hope today's conversation has provided you with valuable insights and the inspiration you need to make a difference in the lives of the children you care deeply about. You don't have to navigate this journey alone. We have a wealth of additional resources, courses, and tools designed to empower you further. Head over to our learning platform at nurturingrelationships.thinkific.com to access resources and learning to continue making a positive impact. Thank you so much for listening and being a vital part of this community. Until next time, let's keep empowering the village.